NBC News has just confirmed that actor Malcolm-Jamal Warner has at the age of 54. Authorities in Costa Rica telling NBC News that Warner accidentally drowned while swimming in the ocean on Sunday. Warner is best known for...
The sky over Playa Grande was that cruel kind of beautiful. The kind that feels cinematic until real life plays out in front of it like a horror film with no music. Waves kissed the shore in rhythm. Tourists snapped selfies. And Malcolm-Jamal Warner was just another man enjoying his vacation with family until he wasn't. Witnesses say he waded out into the ocean, smiling, unaware of the invisible current that would change everything in a matter of seconds. The sea took him quickly, brutally. Screams erupted, people ran, and one man, a stranger from Nicaragua, plunged in after him. Lifeguards weren't fast enough. CPR wasn't enough. Nothing was.
Know that this incident took place on Sunday in Costa Rica. He was on a family vacation. He was swimming off of the coast of a town called Cocles in the province of Limon. He was swimming at Playa Grande. I mean, I've visited Costa Rica a few times. I was there with my family a few years ago, and those currents can be...
We're told he was pulled from the water by locals who didn't even recognize who they were trying to save. 20 minutes of desperate resuscitation attempts, right there on the sand, under that perfect sky, while his wife and daughter stood nearby, watching, maybe praying, maybe already knowing. The Red Cross later confirmed he was declared lifeless at the scene. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, once Theo Huxtable to an entire generation, gone in an instant at just 54. It's the kind of scene that shouldn't belong to someone who made millions smile, but maybe that's part of the point. This wasn't just a tragic accident. For many, it felt like something colder, calculated, familiar, because this wasn't just a beloved actor swept away by water. It was a man who had made a quiet career out of saying no to Hollywood's games, a man who stayed away from the spotlight unless he had something real to say, who never let himself become a caricature of Black identity for a paycheck. He refused to be typecast, refused to be silence. In the area of sound bites and sellouts, Warner's refusal to play along stood out. And that's what makes some people wonder if the ocean wasn't the only force that pulled him under.
To me, when I was on the show and we had such good times together, I was probably 18 and Malcolm was probably 17, 16, I don't know. Wow. And we would take walks together, all of us, and pick up food, talk, played basketball, hung out on the weekends, went to parties together. He was so good.
Let's talk about the so-called Hollywood blacklist curse. You've heard the whispers, actors who speak out, challenge the machine, or just plain refuse to conform, suddenly finding themselves on the wrong side of fate. It happened to Chadwick, to Prince, to Whitney. Accidental this, mysterious that, and now Malcolm? His legacy was one of quiet rebellion. No scandals, no public breakdowns, no DUIs. Just consistent, thoughtful work and an insistence on protecting his family from the glare. He didn't need the headlines. So when he suddenly becomes one face down in Costa Rican waters, people start asking questions that Hollywood doesn't like to answer.
Oh, so unbelievable there. And Branson, I also was reading that just days ago, he had another podcast episode that was dropped. And now a lot of fans are starting to really listen to that as maybe one of his last times that you hear him.
Warner was more than a nostalgic callback to a bygone era of television. In recent years, he'd stepped fully into the role of cultural elder, producing, writing, speaking, even launching a podcast just weeks before his final breath. Not All Hood was meant to show the world a side of Black life untouched by stereotypes. And it was personal. There are so many different facets of the Black community, he said. We wanted to have a space where we can really explore, but now we have to wonder, was that kind of honesty too dangerous? Was Malcolm poking a bear he couldn't see? Some insiders say Warner had quietly turned down several major roles that required him to tone down the intelligence or lean into the street persona. One former network producer, who asked not to be named, told us Warner walked out of a lucrative pitch meeting because an exec said, "Theo's grown up, but let's not make him too woke." He didn't need the check that badly, and just like that, the calls slowed down. The speaking invites dried up, but the podcast? That was his way of speaking directly to the people without gatekeepers. And now he's silent forever.
What he really had was a multi-decade career in Hollywood, spanning several different shows. I did a little bit of research before this, and he had about 84 credits on his resume before passing away at just 54 years old. And TMZ also obtained photo, possibly the last photo of him that we may even have ever seen on TMZ.com at the airport on July 13th coming into Costa Rica. It's just so tragic to look at that photo and think that just a week later he'd be passing.
But here's where the puzzle starts to twist. According to Costa Rican authorities, a second man, only 29 years old, from Nicaragua, was involved in the same incident. This man, who has no connection to Warner, dove into the current in an attempt to save him. He nearly lost his life, was pulled out, stabilized, sent to the hospital in critical condition, and then quietly discharged just days later with barely a whisper. No press conference, no family statements, not even a first name, no photos. The only thing we know? He survived. And the moment he could walk again, he vanished from the public eye. Why is no one talking to this man? Why is the media treating him like a minor detail when he was the only other person in that water? In any other case, a near hero would be paraded through morning shows and late night interviews. But here, nothing. Radio silence. And if that silence feels a little too intentional, well, we're not the only ones feeling it. One Costa Rican journalist called the lack of information unnerving. Another source hinted that the man had seen something he wasn't supposed to. Theories are already swirling.
I wanted to remind you, as I remind myself, that no matter what's going on, there's always a reason to smile. Like, if you just take a minute to stop and take stock, I guarantee you can find at least one reason to smile. And if for some reason you can't find a reason to smile, then that's probably the best time to be the reason for somebody else.
What did he see? Was Warner struggling before the current took him? Did he say anything? Was there anyone else in the water? And most importantly, why hasn't this survivor spoken publicly? Did someone get to him? There's chatter, always chatter, that Warner may have been under surveillance before the trip. That certain industry forces were uneasy about what he might reveal next on his podcast. And if that sounds far-fetched to you, remember, we're talking about an industry where NDAs are more sacred than wedding vows, and careers can disappear faster than an Instagram post. This brings us back to a name that just won't leave the conversation: Katt Williams. The comedian turned cultural whistleblower has been screaming from the sidelines for years, warning about deviants running the industry and high-powered players who throw lavish parties that no one seems to talk about once the lights come back on. He once said P. Diddy be wanting to party and you gotta tell him no, I did. The kind of party Williams implied where a no doesn't earn you respect, it puts a target on your back. He said it on record, and he hasn't backed down.
Right, because P. Diddy be wanting to party. And you gotta tell him no. You got to tell him no. I did.
Williams warned that 2024 would be the year all the big players catch hell. So far, he's not wrong. Diddy's under federal lock. The FBI raided his mansions and walked out with more than just receipts, allegedly seizing thousands of bottles of oil and paraphernalia used during infamous freak-offs. That's not tabloid fantasy. That's court-documented seizure. And if Katt's timeline holds, there are more shoes about to drop. We're watching a game of Jenga with secrets stacked to the ceiling, and each fallen piece exposes a name we once thought untouchable. So when a respected, grounded, and yes, culturally cautious actor like Malcolm-Jamal Warner passes away, unexpectedly, in a foreign country under vague circumstances, weeks after launching a platform focused on truth-telling, people take notice, especially in the Black community, where Warner wasn't just Theo. He was proof that you could escape the machine and still live with dignity. He was the good guy, the soft-spoken one, the friend who never needed to flex because his work spoke for itself. And now we're left wondering if being good was enough to protect him.
All lies will be exposed, that's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way.
The survivor's silence isn't just a footnote. It's the first ripple in what might be a tidal wave of revelations, one that could pull more secrets into the light, one that could expose who Malcolm trusted and who he didn't. Because you don't drown in an industry like this without someone, somewhere, watching from the shore. But that silence surrounding the man who lived starts to echo louder when we place it against a backdrop of warnings that have been ignored for years. Katt Williams, no stranger to controversy or courage, has been dragging skeletons from Hollywood's closets long before Warner's final swim. He's called out moguls, exposed twisted party invitations, and more recently pointed the finger at an invisible elite pulling strings from behind the velvet curtain. According to Williams, that elite isn't just wealthy, it's ritualistic. And it doesn't just cancel careers, it makes them disappear.
When people are against the Illuminati, then they get punched in the face all the time. The press hates them, and nobody likes them.
He called them by name, the Illuminati, not in whispers, not in code, out loud, repeatedly, and every time he did, another door seemed to close. Bookings dropped, specials got delayed, studio deals vaporized, and still, he didn't stop. All these big deviants are catching hell in 2024, he warned earlier this year. A few laughed, some nodded. But now, in the aftermath of Warner's suspicious accident, the laughter's starting to fade. Because if Katt's been right about Diddy's empire of secrets and right about the entertainment world's obsession with control, what else might he be right about? Let's connect the dots. Warner had been offered roles that demanded he play up stereotypes, dumb down dialogue, and trade cultural nuance for ratings. He said no, again and again. That's not good business in a town that wants black excellence only when it's marketable and muted. Warner chose dignity. He walked away from scripts that mocked, from storylines that insulted. He wasn't angry, he was intentional, but in a system that thrives on obedience, intention can look like rebellion, and rebellion gets punished.
I hate to bring up the sad news, but news did break today of the untimely passing of Malcolm-Jamal.
I can't believe it.
We've seen this script before. When Prince started talking about ownership and label corruption, he changed his name to a symbol and painted slave across his cheek. Then came the stories that he was isolated, paranoid, fragile, until one day he was gone, found alone in an elevator, in a mansion he built to escape the system. Then there's Michael Jackson, who warned us all, through lyrics, interviews, veiled metaphors, that they don't care about us. He fought for his catalog, fought the industry, fought for control. Then one day, the lights went out at Neverland, and the only story that remained was what others wrote for him. These weren't just tragedies, they were warnings. Outspoken black artists, men with influence, money, and platforms, men who started to question why they couldn't own their masters or why the gatekeepers all seemed to know each other behind closed doors. When their paths turned toward independence, so did the headlines. Accidents, overdoses, medical mysteries. In Warner's case, it wasn't pills or prescriptions, it was paradise. And that somehow makes it even more chilling.
Early morning swim, he had gone out to the coastline just before sunrise, and a little after sunrise, got into the water. Not too many details about what exactly happened once he was in the water, but authorities did end up finding his body actually hundreds of yards away down the shoreline. His body was discovered in a rocky cove. It was brushed up against that.
Let's talk patterns. Over the last 2 decades, an unusual number of high-profile entertainers have taken their final breaths far from home, vacations that ended in funerals, jet-setting celebrities slipping away in foreign hotels, luxury yachts, or tropical beaches. There's something almost poetic about it. Something too clean, too distant. Fans can't rally. Family can't respond fast enough. Autopsies happen under unfamiliar authorities, and more often than not, the stories come prepackaged. He was tired. She needed rest. They went for a swim and never came back. Tragic, yes, but also convenient. The perfect crime if one were to be committed. We're not saying there's a rule book, but if there were, make it look like nature would be on page 1. Because oceans don't talk, sand doesn't leave fingerprints, and if something sinister happened out in those Costa Rican waters, we may never know unless someone starts asking the right questions, like, why was Warner alone in the surf? Why has the Nicaraguan man vanished into anonymity after being hailed briefly as a hero? Why aren't reporters digging into who paid his hospital bill, who spoke to him before he disappeared, or who he's staying with now?
What's good? Yes, I got the flower in my hair. Today's my daughter's birthday. She put the flower there, so I'm rocking it. What? It's a beautiful day here in Atlanta. I just wanted to shout out and just spread some love and some good cheer. And, you know, life is out here lifing, right? For me and for everybody else.
And here's another angle. What exactly was Warner working on before his vacation? Not All Hood wasn't just a podcast. It was a platform. He'd already recorded several unreleased episodes, and insiders say he planned to take aim at what he called the machinery behind perception. Topics reportedly included Hollywood's quiet discrimination, the real reason certain shows never get greenlit, and the personal toll of keeping your soul in an industry that feeds on illusion. We haven't heard those episodes. Will we ever? Despite the silence surrounding those unreleased episodes, some fragments from Malcolm-Jamal Warner's Not All Hood podcast have started resurfacing online, and they're raising eyebrows. Listeners have pointed out subtle but unmistakable shifts in Warner's tone during the final weeks. Once measured and reserved, his delivery began to carry an edge, more urgency, more frustration. In one of the last episodes to air publicly, he spoke about legacy not just as a gift, but as a burden, alluding to the cost of telling hard truths in an industry where survival often means staying quiet. The podcast was never marketed as a political show, but it became increasingly clear that Warner was trying to say something beneath the surface. And now, fans are dissecting every word with a new lens.
Historic and frozen in time as this iconic character. What did that mean for television, and what does it still mean to this day?
Sam, Theo Huxtable was me. Theo Huxtable was my brothers. Theo Huxtable was the first time someone that looked like me saw someone that looked like himself on television. He was the epitome of what we as kids, in a certain community were growing.
Some of his reflections have taken on an almost prophetic quality. In a now widely circulated clip, he spoke about the danger of being real in a world that profits from the mask. A line many believe was his subtle way of calling out the industry's expectation for performers, especially Black men, to play roles that are digestible for mainstream audiences, even at the cost of dignity. Theories are swirling that Warner may have used the podcast to encode messages he couldn't say out loud, cloaked in poetic metaphors and layered commentary. It wouldn't be the first time a public figure used art as armor against a system that censors through silence. But in Warner's case, the timing, just weeks before his demise, feels too significant to ignore. What's also unsettling is the abrupt halt of production, just as Warner teased a new miniseries focused on how Black narratives are sanitized for white comfort. The topic was controversial, sure, but not out of step with Warner's body of work. Still, some believe that series may have been the tipping point. There's no record of the episodes ever being recorded, and no files have been released posthumously. Could someone have stepped in before the episodes made it to the light? Was Warner warned, pressured, or even surveilled before his trip to Costa Rica? With so little transparency from his team and no clear answers from streaming platforms, those final podcast episodes have become something of a Rosetta Stone, offering perhaps the last traces of what Malcolm-Jamal Warner truly wanted to say before everything went silent.
For everything I'm telling you, that's why I can say them so freely.
Kid, I need another one. You here, get your number.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Come on.
And what about the people who knew? Warner was close to several industry veterans who themselves had complicated histories with powerful execs. One source, an award-winning screenwriter, says Warner had become increasingly frustrated with the industry's fake wokeness, that he wanted to pull the curtain back on the smoke and mirrors of representation and show who's really writing the checks. That same source says Warner had become paranoid in recent months, asking questions about surveillance and legal protection. He wasn't scared, but he was cautious. So where does that leave us? A respected actor with no enemies, no scandal, no substance use history, gone. A mysterious witness who lived to tell the tale, silent. An increasingly believable pattern of influential Black voices being silenced the moment they step out of line, and behind it all, a system that rewards silence, punishes defiance, and thrives on distraction. How many times do we need to see the same story unfold before we start asking, who's writing the script?
I've not been funded. They pay you to not talk about things they don't want you to talk about. They tell you that themselves.
Katt Williams has already accepted that he may never be allowed back into the rooms where deals are made. I turned down $50 million 4 times just to keep my integrity, he said, because P. Diddy be wanting to party and you gotta tell him no. That's not just a punchline, that's a warning. A veteran of the industry turning down a fortune because he knows what happens at the parties where no phones are allowed and NDS are longer than the guest list. Warner, too, kept his distance. He built a life around boundaries, and now, just as he started using his platform to tell inconvenient truths, he's gone.
Yes, obviously so heartbreaking. Such a tragedy. Here in the office, so many Cosby Show fans of this wonderful actor, and he had a very long career, even after the show that he was known for.
And still, we come back to the man who survived, the man pulled from the same waves, treated in the same clinic, then released with no fanfare and no explanation. Did he see Warner struggling? Did he hear anything shouting, splashing, the presence of someone else nearby? Did he see something that frightened him into silence? Or was he part of something else entirely? Was he meant to be a witness or a warning? If Malcolm-Jamal Warner's passing wasn't just a tragic accident, then who stands to gain from silencing him? Was it just the ocean? Or was it a message? And if so, who's next? How many more voices will vanish before the pattern becomes impossible to ignore? Let us know your theories in the comments. Are we watching accidents or orchestrations? Who do you believe is really running the show? Stay sharp, stay questioning, and rest in power, Malcolm. You were never just a character on a screen.